This idea, if you listen to right-wing radio, which I would imagine many of you do, hopefully, that are listening to this show. I want everybody to listen to this show. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. But those that listen to right-wing radio, I was listening to a couple shows yesterday, and they were using this term, one bad apple. By the way, there are 4 officers in jail, not one right now because of the incident that took place in Minneapolis. There's no such thing as one bad apple here, folks, okay? We're not talking about a classroom where you have one child that's acting up. We're talking about police brutality, and we're talking the fact that there are not one bad apple, but there are systemic racism in this country for decades, for hundreds of years. And if you're one of those people that don't believe that, you're just an idiot. I don't know what else to say. With that being said, there are bad actors on both sides. There are bad cops. There are bad protesters that are looting, that are rioting. It happens everywhere. So there's no such thing as one bad apple when it comes to this subject. So with that being said, there's a reason why I am bringing this up. And I want to give you a few examples. And make no mistake about it, before I do this, I want to be clear. I support the police department. I was in a restaurant the other night. Who was I with? I was with a few people, actually. And I saw a table.
Arby's?
I saw a table of cops, 4 cops, sitting at a table in the corner. I didn't want to go up to them and bother them. I didn't want to startle them. But I thought it was my duty to go up to them. And I went up to them and I said, guys, I just want to thank you for what you do. And it was a, African-American police officer, a few white police officers, and they were very appreciative. And I just said, guys, I'm sorry what you're having to go through because of some of the bad cops out there. Now, I don't know these guys from a hole in the wall, but I'm going to assume that they were good cops. And they were very appreciative. They were very thankful. They all shook my hand. They said, we appreciate your words. That means a lot to us. And I think it's important that we shouldn't assume that all cops are bad cops. We shouldn't assume that if you see a cop, they must be a racist. I think that's absurd. I think it is our duty. If you want them to treat you fairly, I think we should also treat them fairly. Don't make an assumption that they're bad. A lot of these protesters, sadly, are doing that. If you see a cop on the street, I've talked to police officers, and they've told me how much they appreciate this. If you just go up to them and shake their hand and say, officer, I just want to thank you for what you do. They've told me how much that means to them. I've talked to a ton of cops. I lived in Seattle. I've had a few cops that told me that. I've lived here for 20 years. I grew up in Connecticut. These cops appreciate it, and they will treat you well if you treat them well. I'm a firm believer of that. With that being said, yes, there is a small percentage of police officers out there that are just bad, if you want to use the term bad apple, not one bad apple, but there are a small percentage of cops out there that are just bad people. They abuse their power, they're racist, so on and so forth. But I just want to make that point. It's important. Go up to these police officers. I also said to them, I'm so sorry that what happened to one of your own in Vegas. It's a travesty. It's horrible. They talked to me a little bit about that, and they also, a few of these cops also admitted to me how angry they are at these 4 officers in Minneapolis. They're angry because now their lives are put at risk. I think it's important to do that. With that being said, some of those bad cops that I was talking about, have a listen to this. This is the NYPD officers that were caught over a police scanner threatening to run over protesters. Have a listen to this.
So we have a group of people blocking traffic on Albany and Dean Street. They're refusing to let the orange go eastbound on Dean Street and Albany. So we're stuck here. Run them over. Shoot them. Don't put that over yet.
All right, so yeah, here's how we know that's legitimate. First of all, we heard that officer at the end say, don't put that over the air. Well, guess what? Too late. You effed up. We have one of those officers saying, shoot the mother effers. And, what, JD? You don't think that's legitimate?
I'm here. I'm listening.
Oh, well, you made a gesture. Well, what?
I'm sitting here. I'm listening.
So
please continue, Brian.
Okay. Well, I just don't know why you made a gesture. I mean, can we call this out? It's wrong?
Well, no, just continue your statement.
Okay. But I'm just asking you, this is wrong, right? You don't support this.
Do I support police officers running people over? No.
Do you support them on a scanner saying something like that?
No. Why would I support that?
I don't know, because you made a gesture.
That being said, New York PD is completely overmatched right now. There's 35,000 police officers in the entire city. There's 8.5 million people that live there. The National Guard should have been there to help them 4 or 5 days ago.
Okay.
They are totally overmatched, and I'm sure they're extremely angry.
Okay, that's a different subject, though. I'm specifically now talking about the audio that I just played 10 seconds ago, and that was an officer saying, shoot the mother effers, and another cop. What was the other part of that
So
sound.
you just said run them over.
Yeah, run them over. And you made a gesture, and so I'm sorry if I made an assumption. I just made the assumption that you're just throwing this out the way like it's not a big deal. I think it is a big deal. We need our officers to act professionally, just like you would want protesters to act in a professional manner. And if officers want to be treated with respect, you got to give respect. So those few officers here should be ashamed of
Let me
themselves.
ask this: if you are in the middle of the street and you're preventing officers from getting to from point A to point B to help another officer, what are they supposed to do to you?
Not run people over.
So what are they supposed to do to you?
Well, I think
if they say
that's a separate subject.
if they say, please disperse, and they say it, let's say 4 or 5 times,
sure, I'll
and you
answer that.
refuse to disperse,
I'll answer that.
What are they supposed to do?
Okay, I'll answer that.
Okay.
But before I answer it, I will say again, it's not an excuse to run people over or shoot the mother effers, which is what we are talking about.
Did you see the
Okay,
bridge?
so
the Manhattan Bridge had 5,000 people on it.
Okay, so you got to let me answer your question. What you do in that situation is the opposite of running people over and shooting them. What you do is what some of these officers have done. It is gas that you can use in certain situations. It is rubber bullets, which are very effective in pushing people back. You also have officers with shields that are capable of pushing people back, which is what they did for the president of the United
If you're
States.
in your car
which is what they did
and there's 20 people in front of you,
which is what they did.
How do you get out of the way? I mean, how are you?
okay.
How can one person
trying to
beat
understand
20 people from in the middle of the street? How can they make them
so
move?
I was finishing my answer, and what I was also saying is it's never a reason to run people over. That is what we heard in that scanner. It is murder. They're not allowed to do that. You can't shoot people with regular bullets, and you can't run people over. That is the point of why I played that audio. Now, I want to play some audio in Chicago. Chicago PD scanner appears to catch cops ignoring a shooting. Listen carefully to this.
The survey can fall in. They're shooting. There's gangbangers versus gangbangers. They're shooting across at each other. Let them do it. Let it be.
Completely ridiculous. When you have people in a neighborhood, whether it's black-on-black crime or two gangs, that is what the police do. It's to protect and to serve, and it's not just the people that are shooting each other that are at risk in a situation like that. As you know, there are homes there are children, there are people that are in harm's way when you see that type of shooting. So for Chicago police officers to say, let it be, is completely over the top, and it's wrong. And I hope you can admit that as well.
Brian, this has been happening in Chicago for years.
So you're defending that.
I'm not defending anything, but it's been happening in Chicago for a long time. When some police officers can't even go to neighborhoods there because they get shot and attacked, and that's without the riots.
Then don't be a cop.
That's under different circumstances. What do you mean, don't be a cop?
So you're defending. So I'm trying to ask you a question. You didn't
I'm
answer.
saying, Brian,
are you defending what those officers
if there's X amount of police officers available, and you have rioting and looting going on all over
That's
the
not what
country,
we're talking
and
about.
you have a finite amount of
not what
officers
we're talking
that
about.
can go to different locations, I mean that's why the National Guard is so necessary under those circumstances.
so-
we are talking about that.
No, we're not.
I'm just explaining. I'm explaining to you why, if you only have X amount of police officers and you have so many things that you have to get handled, and gang violence happens all the time in Chicago, which it does every single weekend, and Black Lives Matter isn't there protesting in Chicago.
Okay, so
What are you supposed to do under those circumstances? And especially, so in one circumstance, you have people in the middle of the street preventing police officers from going where they need to go, and the other circumstance, you have riots taking place all over the city. And then in one part of town where shootings are happening and have happened almost every day for the last 5 or 6 years at an absolutely unbelievable clip for the United States, police officers, they need more help. That's why the National Guard is so important to have under these stressful times, under crisis with looting and rioting taking place. That's why they need this military assistance, Brian.
okay, so I just asked a very simple question. I don't know if I got a simple answer on that one. I just asked, do you support what those officers are doing? But I want to give out the number. What do you think about this? What do you think about the police scanner at the NYPD? What do you think about what just took place in Chicago? The number to call is 702-257-5396. Again, that number, if you want to be a part of the conversation, is 702-257-5396. Do you think police officers should be able to run over protesters? Your thoughts, your calls. Coming up next on the Vegas Take. All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. We're talking about what has happened on these police scanners that I certainly find troubling. I want to play them for you again, and then we'll take your phone calls at 702-257-5396. This is NYPD officers caught over a scanner threatening to run over protesters, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this is absolutely disgusting. I don't understand why a police officer thinks it's okay to go on a scanner and say this. Have a listen.
And so we have a group of people blocking traffic on Albany and Dean Street. They're refusing to let the orange go eastbound on Dean Street and Albany. So we're stuck here.
Run them over. Shoot those motherfuckers. Don't put that over yet.
So while that is going on, Chicago PD scanner appears to catch cops ignoring a shooting. Have a listen to this.
Do we have that audio, Sean?
The survey can fall in. They're shooting. There's gangbangers versus gangbangers. They're shooting across at each other. Let them do it. Let it be.
Okay, now luckily in that first part of audio that we played, NYPD, nobody ran anybody over, thank God, but nobody shot anybody, but certainly inappropriate to put that over a police scanner. As far as the Chicago PD situation, as far as I know, nobody has been fired from these statements or comments, but I think we all can agree that both were inappropriate. I want to take your phone calls on that. We want to know what you think. 702-257-5396. Again, that number, if you want to be a part of the conversation, is 257-5396. Let's start off with Seth.
Hey, what's up, Seth?
How's it going, guys? So
Going
numerous
okay.
police scanners have already been stolen, and the protesters have been caught using the police scanners. So we don't even know if that's true or not. It could easily be a protester. But
Sir,
either way,
so
I'm looking at a statistic here that says Black Americans are twice as likely to die from COVID-19. What that means is anybody who's protesting is actually causing Black Americans to die. So if you really are concerned about Black Americans, you should not be protesting at all. And I find it appalling a video I saw of New York health workers clapping and giving thumbs up at a large mass gathering. Appalling.
Okay, so let me ask you a question to be fair. And by the way, I've been on the air, and I said it this week, that those people are not practicing social distancing, and it is irresponsible. While I understand why the majority of them are doing it, they're not practicing social distancing, and it's wrong. I certainly agree with that. Would you also agree?
Americans, which
all right, hold on.
thing they're protesting against. It's
all right, so
hypocritical.
let's get away from the Black Americans for a second, and let me just ask you another question. Would you apply the same to some of these Open Up Nevada and Open Up the Country protests? I like to call them Trump rallies. Would you also agree in some of these rallies they also were not practicing social distancing?
The size comparison and egging it on from the government and Hollywood is what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, I'm talking specifically about the coronavirus, and I'm going to ask you the same question again because you dodged it. Were you also just as upset at thousands of protesters, those throughout the country, that were not practicing social distancing?
Well,
many of those. So you're not. Okay, you can think I'm misleading all you want, but I'm going to ask you the question now for a third time.
The numbers aren't even close.
I'm going to ask you a question now for the third time.
The numbers are not close.
I'm going to ask you.
There was a lot more protesters for
All
Black
right.
Lives
The numbers
Matter
weren't
and
close.
for George
My
Floyd
question
than
still.
anything else.
Thank you. My question still stands, so I'm going to ask it third time to Seth. There were some protests throughout the country, the Open Up, the economy rallies, where there were thousands of people. Many of them Trump supporters. I call it a Trump rally, but you can call it what you like, that were not practicing social distancing. So now for the third time, I'm going to ask you a very simple and logical question. Are you okay, or were you okay, with those same protesters, those that were not practicing social distancing in the Open Up the Economy rallies? Yes or no?
Has Doug Basham been laid in the last
All right, get the hell off the show. You're a coward. Bye-bye.
He's not a coward.
Bye-bye.
But you're trying to paint him as just like you do every single time.
Okay.
You're trying to paint him as
Nope.
not credible
Nope.
for not willing to go on both sides.
So let me be
of
clear.
the equation.
Okay, JD. So
and that's a valid point by him.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah,
there's been a. I mean,
but my point wasn't valid. My point wasn't valid at all.
Not even close to the same thing.
Okay, so
Brian.
I'll ask you the same question.
Not even close to the same thing.
I'm going to ask you the same question. I'm going to ask you the same question.
Just letting you know.
Because Seth is a coward.
You are the one getting angry, not me right now.
I am angry.
Stein?
I am. Okay. I'm frustrated.
But now I have.
why.
But now I have a right to get angry.
So I'm frustrated because it's a ridiculous, cowardly way of answering questions or lack thereof. Here's a man who I agreed with, by the way. I agreed with him. You know why? Because a few days ago, during these protests, I was very critical of those that are not practicing social distancing in these BLM protests. Totally clear on that. All I simply said was, because Seth is a moron, because Seth is a knee-pad Trump supporter who can't criticize any Trump supporter for anything. So all I asked him was this. Very simple question, and I'll ask you the same question. There were some protesters, and I like to call them Trump rallies, some that were not practicing social distancing either. Just as some of these BLM protesters were not doing that, some of these Trump protesters in the Open Up the Economy were not doing that either.
Brian, all of the BLM protesters are not doing it.
So if you can let me finish my question. If you can let me finish my question.
Well, you're wrong.
If you can let me finish.
All of them. All BLM protesters are not practicing social distancing.
You can think I'm wrong, but that doesn't give you a right to interrupt me. Please let me finish the question. For those protesters in the Open Up the Economy rally that were not practicing social distancing, isn't it fair to also criticize them for the same thing?
Well, I don't understand why you have to get this little tiny victory for yourself.
So you won't answer the question.
You agree?
Okay.
Just agree with
question.
Seth. Just say you're right. Instead, you go to the next level because he supports Trump, and you want to make him look stupid because he supports Trump.
It's not about making somebody look stupid.
That's exactly what it's all
I'm
about.
going to answer what you just said because what you said is wrong. It's not about trying to make Seth look stupid. It's not about that Seth is a Trump supporter. It's I'm trying to find out if the same type of health issues apply to both sides. Now, I am applying it to both sides. The difference between you and me and the difference between Seth is I'm able to call out on the air those BLM protesters and the Trump supporters because I'm not biased. You're not capable of doing that. Here's a perfect example of that. So I will ask you a second time.
Hold on, Brian.
Because you're not answering the question.
I am fully capable of doing that.
You haven't answered the question.
What am I supposed to answer here?
Yes.
Some protesters in those open Nevada, open Michigan, whatever, they were not practicing social distancing. But many more protesters in the George Floyd and what's going on the last 9 days. I mean, none of them have been practicing social distancing, and they've been destroying property, killing police officers. That wasn't
part of my question.
Stealing things.
That wasn't part of my question.
So what's
so you are willing?
You want me to condemn
all people who don't practice social distancing, no matter what protest it is. Seth was not willing to do that because he's an idiot.
Honestly, I don't care either way because I think it's all BS.
So you don't think people should be practicing social distancing? Okay, fair enough.
No.
Right.
In the Ozarks, there was a huge party 2 weeks ago, massive Memorial Day party. There was like 200,000 people there. There hasn't been one case, and they were chest to chest. There has not been one case of COVID-19 since that took place, Brian.
Okay.
The virus has most likely run its course. Mm-hmm. This is all done. I'm not.
All right.
I don't believe there's going to be a massive uptick in COVID-19 cases, but the one group of people that should not be probably doing this and not social distancing are African Americans because it has been proven that they're adversely affected by this more so than any other race.
I will say that in a lot of these BLM protests, social distancing is not being practiced, but there are a lot of masks.
That's true.
We'll say that.
So it applies to African.
By the way, doesn't the hot weather kill the virus anyway?
I'm just saying. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying the virus affects African Americans worse than other races. At least it has in the United States.
And I'm sure that's where Seth's concern.
The hot weather kill the virus.
He actually made that statement abundantly. He said what they're doing is it's just. It's kind of an oxymoron, being called Black Lives Matters, but at the same time not practicing social distancing and having this virus, that affects you more than everybody else. That was Seth's point. My point is you didn't have to get the victory with Trump there. Just say I agree with you. That's it. But you wanted to attack Seth because he supports Trump.
Here's where you're 100% wrong, and your words are classic buffoonery. Okay, classic buffoonery.
There's nothing buffoonery about my words, Brian.
Yes, it is, and I'll explain why if you'll let me talk for 20 seconds. I gave Seth an opportunity to be consistent with his opinions. I also agreed with him because I have something called intellectual honesty, and I'm not biased. And all I wanted him to say, and you haven't clearly said it either, all I wanted him to say was, listen, if there was anybody in those Trump rallies or Open Up Nevada rallies that was not practicing social distancing, I will also criticize them the same way. Me and Seth would have agreed. It would have been a good conversation, and I also agreed with him when it came to BLM. The reason why Seth was not able to do that is the reason why many buffoons on the right that support Trump are also unable to do it, because they're not intellectually honest. They're biased. Seth, you are a complete fool. 702,
great call. You are not
702,
a fool.
Yes, he is. 702-257-5396. Let's go to Doug. Doug, you're next on the Vegas Take.
Hey, what's up, Doug?
Hi, gentlemen. I'd like to get back to the main idea of what's going on right now and why there are the protests. I have always been a supporter of my military and my police, and many people and family and friends in those organizations. And let me tell you why people are mad. They're not policing themselves, and I think they're on notice that it's time for them to make sure that they don't let a guy like this Minnesota police officer be charged 12 times with offenses like this and not be taken off the street. They have to start policing themselves. Obviously, we can't go into their departments and do it for them. You've got to stop these guys, number one, being a doctor and having done hormone replacement therapy. I can tell you there's a lot of cops on the street that are juiced up, okay? Number two, these guys are not taking out the bad apples. They say, oh, well, they're there, but they don't do anything about it. That's the point here. That's the biggest point.
They don't, police across the country are not doing anything to the rioters or the protesters?
No, they're not policing themselves, their own brothers. They're not. The police forces are not taking care of their own bad apples.
He's making the same point that Eli made, where he said, if you have a problem with the police officer, you go complain to the police department. But if the police department is compromised in any way, then nothing gets done.
Well, this is a problem that we've had,
and that's a very valid point. I brought up Amy Klobuchar 6 times, and I'll do it again. She had every single opportunity.
You have no idea the details in that case. It's very difficult to form an opinion on her when you don't know.
Hold on, Brian.
You don't.
Stein.
What?
Well, you're talking about the
Klobuchar.
Derek Chauvin case?
Yeah.
No. Amy, what you're talking about is Amy Klobuchar
about...
has a pattern of referring those cases to the grand jury, which then, unanimously, 10 out of 10.
They let them off every single time.
Never return
what I'm saying is,
for a cop.
when you have strong unions like that, and you have politicians that are in with the unions, they need those votes and they need that money for their campaigns. That's what happens. And I thought what Eli, when he called in, he made a very good point by saying there should be a third party that all they do is oversight on police officers. And Steve Sisolak, a lot of people disagree with this, but yesterday during the protests, he actually had a group of lawyers that were monitoring how police officers dealt with peaceful protesters. And I don't think that's a horrible idea. And so, Brian, I do know what I'm talking about, and I do know all the details of the case. What I'm saying is Amy Klobuchar, and you're attacking because she's a Democrat, but Amy Klobuchar had a lot of opportunities to get Derek Chauvin off the streets, and she didn't take them.
So let me respond
and
to that.
that's what this caller's talking about, too.
If I may respond to that. You just said you had the details in the case. Can you give me one of those 10 cases, the details of any one of those 10 cases right now?
No, I'm saying Derek Chauvin was involved in cases where he was going outside of his line of duty. It doesn't make a difference.
So you don't have the details.
What those specific details are.
You just said you had the details.
But they're the exact same. Obviously, he was doing what he shouldn't be doing as a police officer. That's why they're being brought up, Brian.
Right, so I'll ask you again. You just said you had the details. I'm asking you a very specific question because I'd like. Hold on, let me finish my question. If I can finish, please. Thank you. You just said you had the details. I don't know whether Amy Klobuchar is guilty or not of doing something wrong. So I'm asking you.
And you're assuming she's not because she's a Democrat.
If I can finish again, and you're absolutely wrong on that, too. That's a ridiculous assumption on your part. I'm asking you a very simple question. Do you have any of the specific details in those specific cases where Amy Klobuchar did not hold those police officers accountable that you would like to share with us and educate me? Because I don't have any of the details, and I'm wondering how you can form an opinion on Amy Klobuchar in those situations if you don't have any specifics on any of those cases. Can you give me one example?
I don't need specifics of those cases.
To form an opinion, you don't need specifics. That makes sense.
He was brought up 12 different times, like this last caller said, for things that he should not be doing as a police officer. After the second or the third time, I don't care how egregious the case is. Why is there not why is there not a 3-strike rule for police officers? Why is there a 12 or 15-strike rule for police officers?
Dr. Doug was talking about about police and prosecutors and the system not holding other cops responsible, and he brought up Amy Klobuchar as an example of kicking the can down the road. When they had the opportunity to hold them accountable, she's passed it off to the grand jury. I think that's what we're getting at there.
But every case is different, and we're going to get back to the phone calls at 702-257-5396. All I know is the way I am is I don't like to form an opinion on a specific case when it comes to an officer without knowing the specific details.
And this isn't a specific case; it's a pattern of behavior with one specific officer.
All right. Well, if you
it's more the person than an isolated situation. And obviously, this guy had no business being on the streets.
So I understand with the George Floyd situation, we do know the specifics on that, or many of them. But if you can give me another example tomorrow of another case where this officer was involved in, I will gladly.
Well, what you're trying to do is
discuss
you're
that with
trying
you.
to say that my opinion is invalid because I don't have specifics of the case. And what I'm saying is Amy Klobuchar had every opportunity to prosecute him and other officers, and she decided against it. I mean, what happened with Philando Castile in 2016?
so
you look at the actual numbers
a
where
different
the
case.
Minneapolis Police Department is the only police department that allows you to do the knee to neck restraint method, as well as they're killing African Americans at a 13 times higher rate than Caucasians.
So we have,
obviously there's a problem there.
So we have no idea, you or I, clearly, because you don't have the specifics. You have no idea whether this officer put his knee on another man's neck. You have no idea the details of all these other cases. And I am not going to criticize a politician when I don't have the specifics. Simple as that. If you want to bring some specifics on at least one other case tomorrow,
that's a cop-out,
then we'll talk. No, it's not a cop-out at all.
Absolutely a cop-out.
You form opinions based on any evidence, and I want to get to the
He's
other
been involved in 12-plus situations like this.
And please give me the specifics of one of those situations, and then we can talk about it. But you don't have those. 702-257-5396. Let's go to Matt. Matt, you're next up on the Vegas Take.
Hey, what's up, Matt?
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to comment on your guys' first question about the scanner tapes that were caught. And I think on the first one, I completely agree with you. I mean, that's just that's completely moronic for them to be talking like that on the scanner. I mean, you might be frustrated at the time that they're in, but that was pretty bad. But on the second one, we don't have enough specifics on that to really make judgment and pass judgment on that officer in particular.
Well, here's what we do know. There was a shooting going on. There were 911 calls on a shooting in Chicago, and you had a couple police officers that let them shoot each other. I think we all could agree in most situations when somebody calls 911, it could be someone in a home, it could be someone that's frightened, it could be someone that has a family. You would probably want police officers to show up and try to defuse the situation. I think we all could agree on that at least, can't we?
I mean, I can agree on that, but I don't have enough specifics on what happened when they showed up. Was it one officer and there's 10 guys engaged in a gunfight? What are you going to do if you're one officer?
Yeah, if you've got a gang war in the middle of looting and rioting that's taking place, and you only have X amount of police officers, and this happens on a very consistent basis, and in some cases, police officers, they are literally afraid to go to neighborhoods because they get attacked, and that was well before any of this started. But if you're in that situation, you have to know the specifics behind it. You mentioned specifics, Brian,
sure,
before, and the context behind it, and the
and
situation before you say that these guys were being egregious in making the decision that they made.
And I will explain further. Even though we don't know details about how many people were shooting each other, and by the way, it could have been one or two people. We don't know that. I will say this, and this is why I disagree with it. You don't respond by saying, let them shoot each other on a dispatch. What you do say, if it's a dangerous, we don't have enough men there, please don't show up because of blah, 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 blah. You don't respond as a professional police officer on a public dispatch and say, let them shoot each other. I would hope that we all could agree on that.
Yes, I mean, I can agree on that you don't want to say that on a scanner, but also I would totally defend the officer in the positions that they're in. I mean, who knows what the specifics were on that? And also, and something that we all need to think about, they are not required to enter a situation when there is deadly force going on force.
I didn't say they were.
They can use personal
absolutely
to go into those situations.
Listen. I'm not disagreeing with any of that, sir. I think you understand what I'm saying, and what I'm saying is it's inappropriate. We have to police officers. It's a very difficult job. They risk their lives every day, but they need to be professional on a dispatch. I appreciate it.
And I'm not sure we should be nitpicking police scanners right now, considering how unprecedented the last couple of days have been in these cities across the country. And how many police officers have not just been, involved in situations with looting and rioting, but also they've been targeted by a lot of different people. I mean, and they know that. Like, they're fully aware that there is a disdain for police officers across the country right now, and it's predicated on what one police department did.
It's not that. There's where you're 100% wrong, and I don't want to get into a debate now, but this is not predicated on what one officer did. That is absurd. This is predicated on hundreds of years of systemic racism in this country and police brutality. That is where you are wrong. This does not have to do with one specific incident. It was sparked by a video of George, but if you talk to 99% of the peaceful protesters, they will tell you this isn't just about George Floyd. This is about systemic racism that has been happening in this country for hundreds of years. Let's go back to the phone calls. 702-257-5396. Let's go to Dan. Dan, you're next on the Vegas Take.
What's up, Dan?
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Love the show. I'm an old guy. Don't like cops all my life, and always people thought I was crazy. But anyway, I think one of the problems is in the hiring process. Obviously, the firing of cops, bad cops, and that's partly due to, like one of the callers, the union process. But in the hiring and the vetting, all you have to do is ask cops a couple basic questions, and most of them, 99.9, would lie. If you say to a cop, let's say you want to be a cop, sir, when you put on that magic belt, the cuffs, the mace, the club, the gun, does that make you feel tougher and more powerful than you really are? And if they say no, it's just a yes or no question. They're lying because yes. So all of a sudden you give cops this untethered power and the right to kill, get away with cops. I mean, it's just the hiring process needs to be revisited. And I'd just like to get your opinion on that. And great show, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your kind. I appreciate
thanks
your kind words there, Dan. Thank you for listening and calling in. I think you're right. I think some cops get into the police business. Not the majority of them, but I think some of them get into the police business because of their ego, and because it does make them feel powerful, and they're on a power trip.
Well, that's true.
But I also think that some of the cops are out there, and when they put on that uniform, I think some of the cops are very diligent. They want to protect and serve, and they care about their community. So I think it goes both ways. So I don't mean to dance around your statement.
By the way,
but I think a percentage of police officers certainly are cops because it makes them feel powerful and ego. So to that, I will agree with you on.
This just happened in New York. 2 female police officers stood down and allowed a store to be robbed at knife point right in front of them. One ran away, and the other one just left. I mean, that just happened like a few minutes ago.
Well, I'll have to look at the details of that.
That's how bad things are right now. That's why the National Guard and in some cases the actual military needs to be involved in these situations, because these police officers in a lot of the cases are simply overmatched.
So
There's
we have
too many people, and they have horrible intentions, and it's happening all over the country.
We have a guy on the line that I made a bet with, I believe 6 months ago. He said that Adam Schiff would be in jail. I believe he did. And then he hung up because he's a coward. So we won't take his call. That's fine.
It was Brady.
His name is Brady. Yeah, he made a bet that Adam Schiff was going to be arrested by June 1st, and now he won't pay up.
Speaking of that,
I think he'll call back tomorrow.
Hillary Clinton has actually been in court the last couple of days over the emails. Did you know that?
Oh, I definitely want to talk about that. That's huge.
I'm just saying there could be.
You don't
some
want to talk about the police
there.
scanners, but we should talk an association between Hillary Clinton's emails and these protests.
No, between Adam Schiff and Hillary Clinton's emails, not the protests.
Well, I mean, there are some shows probably that would entertain that, but I'm not going to entertain that.
What do you mean?
Hillary Clinton's emails. And
I'm just saying she's in court. She's been in court the last couple of days
for emails.
Yes. For 600,000 emails.
Maybe we can investigate Benghazi again. That seemed to work out very well. 9 Republican investigations into Benghazi. No, I just don't want to talk about Hillary Clinton's emails. I don't think that's a subject matter.
It was just a very small tidbit, just something to bring up.
Yeah. No, I don't want to talk about Hillary's emails. I'm sure there's some titillating stuff in there, but
I'm kind of hoping for the day when
I want to see Donald Trump's taxes.
I don't want to say that I want the Clintons to pass away. I'm not saying that. But the day when Bill and Hillary Clinton are no longer on the planet, I think that'll be a good day in terms of the national rhetoric.
I would rather see Donald Trump's taxes than see Hillary Clinton's emails.